Hello, and welcome to another MarketMuse Content Strategy webinar. I'm your host, the co-founder and chief strategy officer for MarketMuse, Jeff Coyle. Today's discussion is going to be called How to Enhance Your Digital Events with Exceptional Content. And it's going to be focused on repurposing, rich media optimization, which is, if you listen to these these webinars, you know that's one of my favorite topics, and planning before, during, and after the event to get the most out of the time you spend promoting, building, doing what we're doing right now, actually having the event. Before I intro our special guest today, though, a little housekeeping. We answer everything, so ask it in the box. Typically, it's on the right side of your screen. However, as you'll note, if you've been on previous webinars, we changed platforms. We are on Elite Studio. We're on On24's platform today. So there are a few changes. If we have any hiccups or whatever, I don't think we will because it's very beautiful, as you can see. Just keep that in mind. But please ask those questions. We either get to them in line if they're directly relevant, or we'll answer them afterwards in the Content Strategy Collective Slack community, where we're going to be doing an AMA with our guests today. Rapid fire questions. It's a whole lot of fun, super intense. The recording and the notes will also be available in a day or two. Look for them in your mailbox. When you are getting that recording, please go check out our archive of webinars. I think we have over 50 now from people like, sales visionaries like Bob Apollo, Andy Crestadina, Stephen Spencer, SEO superstars, and just all around amazing people like Kevin Indig. If you go download those archives and view those webinars, shoot me a note at jeff@marketmuse.com, and we'll set up a content strategy session where I can walk through any of your challenges, what you're working on, truly focused on understanding what your key performance indicators are for content. All right, that's the housekeeping part, the boring part. Now I'm going to intro today's special guest. She's the director of demand generation for On24. Thanks for joining me. Thank you for joining me, Michelle Blondin.
Hey, Jeff, and thanks for joining, guys. Excited to be here today. I can give a little bit of background about myself and what brought me here into this role. I am the director of demand gen at On24. I lead a really brilliant team of marketers, really proud of what we've been building over the last, I've been there just under a year. And we've really transformed in this very interesting time that we're all in as a company, and certainly as a marketing team. So really delighted to be here with you today, Jeff, hosting a webinar on On24 with you. And my story coming to On24 was kind of interesting, and I think really pretty fun for me. So I started out long ago in my career as a marketer, as a customer of On24, several companies ago. And I was fortunate enough to move along. Each company I went to, I was able to either be a part of that team of influencing the decision to bring On24 on, or champion it to get it into the company. So
that's awesome.
So I feel very lucky, but it's also a huge testament to I think our platform and the company. So I'm really proud of to be here in this role. It feels like kind of pulling this thread throughout my career. I've been in demand gen pretty much the whole time I've been in marketing. I find it really fun and challenging because it's always changing. There's always tools to learn and behaviors to keep up with. And, we are all changing as we exist in a digital world, and now even more so as we're existing in a work from home digital world, many of us anyway. And so we've been challenged with going even beyond webinars at On24 and finding that sweet spot of digital experiences and making sure we are able to convey the fact that we can build epic digital experiences beyond just a single webinar that encapsulate engagement, personalization, the data that marketers crave to inform their decisions on how they make their strategy or build their plan for the next quarter. So it's a very exciting time. Excited to be here with you, and I'll let us move on.
Awesome. Oh, no, but that's great. It's a great setup. I mean, we were joking around. This is the most meta event. It's an event about events, about getting the most out of the content for the event and it's during an event. So I'm just loving this discussion. So I'm going to put some polls in your screen. Using On24, we can put polls in there. I've got what's our biggest webinar content challenge? That's going to be our first question. And let's hope we can all see that. Yes, I think so, right?
Yeah. So
awesome.
Yeah.
We're starting to see some data coming in on that information. So please, if you can see it, please let me know. You know, from your standpoint, when you first joined On24, what was your biggest webinar content challenge? What were you doing for your own webinars? What was the team doing already? And kind of what are the things that you've started to do since?
Yeah, great question. So when I joined, I was, really fortunate to come into a team that had already a great engine existed, not just in terms of demand gen, but as far as content goes as well. So it was really just learning what the pieces were, kind of what was contained within that engine. One of our biggest programs, event webinar programs, is our webinar best practice series, and it's kind of our hallmark, or like keystone event every month. And it has, so Mark Bornstein presents on it. He's the face and voice of webinar best practices and of On24. So many of you perhaps on the line might be familiar with him, and perhaps might be one of his groupies for webinar best practice series. So that was one of those big pieces of content, if you will, for, webinar series that was already existing, running really well. I wanted to find out when I first joined, what gaps did we have, elsewhere along, across our audience? Who is our audience? Who are these folks going to webinar best practice series? And where else do we have a gap that we need to fill with content, perhaps? And so I think for me, I'm interested to see what the audience says here. I fall a little bit more in the bucket of like, I have plenty of ideas, but I need to kind of figure out what will work, or like what the best type of content is for my audience. And so that has necessitated me anyway to go in and like map that out.
That's cool.
So so I'll talk a little bit more about that. I think after maybe we take a look at some results.
Yeah, so let's look at them. So you can see here, and I think this is in the screen here. We can see that, my content more engaging, and having plenty of content ideas, but not knowing which will work best. And I think that really does connect to, our discussion today. And it's really how to prepare, how to begin your, the preparation for the event. How do you start pre-webinar? Really good question to start with would be though, why should, what are the reasons why you should have a content strategy beyond just the actual content in the event itself? And what's the way that you think about it, and how do you get started?
Yeah, I love that. And so that sets me up for this slide. So thank you. And this is maybe something that you guys in the audience can take with you and map out for your own organization, your own company. But this is just a real kind of like basic map that we built. And this is taking into account stage. So we talk a lot about the buyer journey at On24, but just in general, I think a lot of us marketers think in that way now, which is really great. The stages of the journey could be called something different depending on where you're at, but this is a generalization of those: awareness, consideration, conversion, and selection. So then we say, okay, well, like, what is our goal at each one of those stages? And for awareness, it's to get like net new people in and convert them into our funnel, like bring them into the family, get them familiar with our content, educate them, right? And so then what's the experience, or what's the content that we're going to build for that? It's very different than, a hands-on tactical webinar about our platform, for instance. So here, at the top of funnel stage, this awareness stage, we're thinking, okay, let's tackle a broad marketing topic, keep it entertaining, thought leadership, bring in some speakers that are going to be thought provoking, and tackle, some just interesting concepts. And then, then after we get some folks in that stage, we'll perhaps build out, the next phase. And that actually already was built out when I joined, the best practice series. So, that's where we get to kind of like map in our content. And and I'm interested to hear too from your side, Jeff, how you guys think about it. But over the last few months, we've then initiated this playbook series. So that's like what I was saying earlier, that very like hands-on, kind of practitioner level playbook or tactical playbook where, we talk about deeper stuff like integration, how to extract data, how to analyze events, or, so this mapping, I think not just for enhancing events, but across all of your content strategy, pretty key, pretty important.
Yeah, I think that one thing we even add, and we add another layer to this, is post-purchase. For our existing customers, how can this information expand their abilities? How can it lead potentially to them becoming, what we reference as kind of a brand champion, or someone who would do like you do. You go to your new role and you buy one on 24, then you go switch jobs and bring on 24 in there. How do you get somebody to, to that kind of a state with the content too? And I mean, my favorite part of this is, and I really think about your sentiment. By the way, this is beautiful. This is worth the price of admission today, right? Just this one slide. But this tells you really that you've got kind of 12, just even in looking at this, 12 possible ways you can hook somebody to want to sign up for this event, right? Yeah. And if you think about it, we're not even thinking of other angles, right? Industry specific, other topics that we're going to cover. Like you talked about best practices for, we're going to talk about today, best practices for rich media optimization, audio, video. Hey, that's a post, So I think that this is both awesome for engagement, but it's also awesome for mapping. So if you think to somebody saying, I don't even know that I have a problem. I run a webinar. It's got an abstract. I then put the thing behind a gated wall. Isn't that good enough? I generate leads. Isn't that good enough? Right? And they don't know they have a problem. What are the types of things you want them to be thinking of to create awareness? So I love that this covers that. So, tell me about planning and, generally how, if you're just doing that, for example, if you're just running the event and then it's done, it's on YouTube, you put it on Twitter, that's a lot of people's events. That's all they do, right? That's it. Tell me about how that is such a missed opportunity.
Huge, right? Because I absolutely agree it is. And not just because of all the capital and resources it takes to put into producing. I mean, thinking about developing the content, rehearsing, the man and woman power put behind the ops to build it and pull it off. But then, you miss out on all of the goodness of on demand if you're just kind of shoving it to the bottom of an archive page that, let's be honest, very few people are ever going to find. It's probably going to collect dust, So we try to like drink our own champagne. I'm here talking about like, yes, go out and get the life out of these events, like squeeze every bit of juice you can out of them. So we try to do that. And some of the different ways we do that are, promoting it on demand. And that can be, I like to be totally candid about that. Like, this is a full-on live event that we're in right now. For anybody thinking that it's pre-recorded or, full-on live. I'm a little nervous, but it's exciting. But, we often do promote on demand, and we're very candid about that. We say, hey, sign up for this. We ran it like a month ago, but you might have missed out. And depending on the stage you're at, this could really fit into, what you might be looking for right now. And our content team writes a much snazzier email to get people hooked in than what I just said. But we're very candid about that. We'll rerun stuff because why not? And we also put some resources in, depending on the performance of the event the first time around. We'll put some resources into promoting it too. So we actually promote our webinars on content syndication. So we go out to publishers and say, we have a really strong performer one quarter, and it looks like it might line up with the target audience that we have with that publisher. We put some paid dollars behind it. Same thing for paid media. So we have several up right now that are very upfront about being on demand, but we have them promoted kind of on an evergreen, or they're somewhat evergreen, or we rotate them out on a quarterly basis, and that way we get a little more juice for the squeeze, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's like the lifetime of the recording too. And so can you share any of those content syndication channels from a tactical perspective?
Yeah, we work really closely with Netline. So they're a huge partner of ours, and so I mean, not just for on-demand webinars, but they're a great partner for just general like ebooks, white papers, just general content. So that's a good one if anyone out there in the world is looking for a good content syndication partner. Highly recommend. Not an ad.
No, I've known them and worked with them, worked against them for a long time. So I know all about it. Right.
Yeah. The one thing I was going to say though, Jeff, is that the webinar itself, we talk about how to re-promote it and get more out of it. But one of the major things I think that marketers want to be thinking about when they're producing an event like this, or whatever webinar, our webinar best practice series, for example, too, is looking inside the event, or say you identify this great topic, you do your mapping, right? Go through this exercise here, and you say, okay, we definitely need a best practice series. Let's do some webinars. Great, but what about some written content too? Some companion pieces? What about your website? Some SEO goodness, right? That I'm sure you could fill in all the reasons why you would want to do that, right?
Yeah,
those are all
it's huge.
triggered.
Yeah, it's a huge concept to be thinking about. It's make sure when you're building out this structure, it's asking the questions. It's the true form of like showing them that you know them, right? It's show that you know the audience, understand what they would want. And when you're saying, hey, we're talking about how to get the most out of a digital events, someone, even a one-person business who might be thinking about, posting a YouTube video, or the largest digital event. These are all applicable strategy, but thinking about how one would get the most out of this rich media. It can be just a video of any kind. It can be an infographic that you've built. It can be anything that doesn't manifest as text content can apply here. And I think the really, really cool way of thinking about it is what you really mentioned, is to say, okay, well, for someone in this persona or this target market who has no awareness about On24, for example, what's the content that we're going to talk about in this video that we should have written on our site for that particular target audience? I mean, you can turn this video into dozens, hundreds of a content package effectively if you were so inclined and so motivated, right?
Yes, definitely. And I was at LinkedIn for several years, and we had a term there called turkey slicing, like turkey slicing your content. I don't know if you've heard that through the content marketing world. I think it made its rounds, and I still think about that. It's like a Thanksgiving dinner, and this is like the main course. This is like the main dinner, right? But then for like a week afterwards, in Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, you're eating those leftovers, and you're making, breakfast out of the stuffing or whatever, and turkey sandwiches and pie, eating pie for days. So turkey slicing up, to make those leftovers, make those like companion meals, if you will. And, I think about that a lot, and we've done that with our playbook series. So that tactical playbook here in the middle of this slide, working on building that out as a series. So we have a bit of an editorial calendar looking out into 2021, and trying to match up a piece of content to go with each of those. That's like, literally created right out of the event, out of the slides. And, we go through the notes and the Q&A and all that good stuff. So the content is there. It just needs to be mined.
It needs to be surfaced. I mean, it's like I work with a lot of teams who have books, physical books, and how do we turn that into a compelling website and a website experience with the goal of either selling the book or getting newsletter registrations or other types of calls to action. Similar concept here. And I'm interested in your sense of kind of before the event, during the event, and post event. Like if you can walk through how you think about what content to prep before, what content's is there content just taken from the event? I guess if it's a long event or a multi-day event, I know I have some feedback or some thoughts on that. And then post-event, like what are the things that you take from this? And one of my most, the things that I asked for at the top of the show is, hey, ask us questions, because that's actually one of the answers, right? It's as questions come in and we talk about them. That's it. Well, this whole thing's improvisational, but that's the real improvisational, unpredictable side of this, right? You ask a question, we answer it. We could not possibly have predicted that, right? Absolutely. Well, how do you think about pre, during, and post?
Yeah. So this, on this slide, that's a little bit of the pre. I will say though, we didn't really cover what happens if you're just at a loss for what content to create. Where do you get that inspiration? And my answer for that is maybe everywhere. If you really start to think about it, inspiration is everywhere. So depending on your industry and your target audience, ICP, et cetera, what their use cases are, we're trying to map that out, right? But then maybe go to your peers, maybe go to LinkedIn and ask your network, hey, what are some top of mind, questions or challenges around XYZ? How do we get some of those ideas flowing? The news is great. And we get marketing and content ideas from just reading the news. What a concept. And it sounds so silly, but it's so valuable. I'll research competitors. What are the conversations going out there right now, and what is interesting? What is getting people to react and reply back or comment? So I just wanted to mention that, because I think that sourcing content is sometimes challenging. Sometimes it's a little bit of a roadblock to come up with a cool idea. And I will say, Jeff, I know it's going to sound so shameless, but we are MarketMuse customers now, and our content team is in there every day and doing exactly that. So researching, understanding what's the biggest opportunity, what's going to be the biggest bang for the buck, somewhat, so to speak, for us to tackle as a topic that we might want to own or just rank better for, or where is there that opportunity? So
keep it coming. There's no shame in that. It's the two phases. It's understanding what's out there, right? And that's what we have a solution also called Newsroom, where we can actually look at news content juxtaposed against web content. And we use that for similar concepts, right? So, but it's about what's out there, what's the table stakes? If we're going to talk about digital events, what are the things we have to talk about, right?
Yeah.
Which is transcriptions. If we don't talk about transcriptions, we missed the boat completely. But then also, what's the blue ocean? What's the stuff that nobody's talking about? And I think when you look at another event that might have been similar, what didn't they cover that we should have, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really when you create that unique advantage, and you're thinking about your customers. So you're adding value, or they call it information gain. Everyone listening to this is going to get something more than they could have gotten anywhere else, and that's what you want to create in your events.
Yes, I love that. And that brings up a good point too. I mean, isn't that why we all reach out to colleagues and partners, right? And have guest speakers on, because of that, that exponential gain that we get from that. So, chatting with you right now, I feel inspired. Hopefully I'm bringing some value to your audience. And, there's a question in here. I'm just going to go off script, but from someone named Michelle, actually, do you have any advice on creating content when you're not the subject matter expert? And I think that's an amazing question, and something that, we all probably have encountered or, asked ourselves. And there's an answer right there. Bring in a guest speaker that is more of a subject matter expert. Maybe go out and, get some research or, read up on it, tap your colleagues. So very, very good question.
Yeah, I think that's where your analysis, you're trying to find the stuff that wasn't covered, right? You're trying to extract the information out of your network or, out of the audience too. And it's where you're really like showing the audience that you understand them, that you understand what they need, what they want. All of that's really, really key to having a successful event. When you're designing the actual event experience itself, what are the types of things you're doing to get the most out of your guests, get the most out of your audience? It obviously there's a prep component to the actual discussion, but how are you setting up the events specifically to make sure that they connect with the audience?
Yeah, so I have some things to share on that, of course. So I wanted to give, I love this, Jeff. It's like more like a chat, coffee chat, but I couldn't help putting some slides to kind of illustrate the point.
I'm cool.
But in the console, so in a live webinar, we often do try to think about how we optimize that experience for our audience, but then in a self-serving way, we also want to make sure that we're extracting the most data, interesting points out of it, and perhaps designing the event literally to help shape our future content. So in many ways, we're able to do just that with our platform. And so we have, the media player, obviously, where we can kind of gauge, interest level. We can do like little pulse checks. We can ask, obviously, or, have Q&A. We get great questions around content, regularly. So I'll actually show a little bit about what we mean by that. We also can discover pain points in Q&A. As well, where people are like, oh, like, how do I create content when I'm not a subject matter expert? So, that's a great topic. The resources, there are content topics in there that we kind of see if that's like maybe the next step for people. Maybe they kind of convert on those pieces of content to continue their journey. We can also use a survey to really dig in. And I mean, the sky's the limit with the survey. So as far as the poll questions, you guys already participated, some of you, or at least noticed that that's a way to help guide. And in the next example here, I'll show what I've done in the past. So in our playbook series, I actually ask or whoever our presenter is, we ask the audience to help us pick the next topic. And so for this one, we said, hey, help us decide on the next playbook in the series. It also takes a little bit of the load off our shoulders to say, oh God, what's the perfect one? What do the masses want? and we just, we add in a couple options here that are kind of already in our minds or already in the calendar, ready to go. But ultimately, like, this is a great example. Like over 50% of people that weighed in were really ready to see this create cohesive journeys for your digital events as a next topic. So great way to crowdsource. You can't argue with that, and really helpful for us to understand where the mindset is of our audience.
Yeah, I think it's just great editorial. I mean, it is also this case, best practice from a content strategy or a search engine optimization perspective is really to write to the target user intent profiles. So when I'm creating content, I'm thinking about writing comprehensively. And by the way, I believe it was Michelle that asked the question. This is something that I'm very passionate about. It's doing analysis and research of content that tells how to tell the story of what it means to be an expert, or to me, a subject matter expert on a topic. I mean, that's the core of the, MarketMuse technology for sure. So that's the way that I would really recommend looking at this, not just from a, what's the first article I can find, but what is everything that exists? What's the information that's happening in omnichannel, in social, on, events like this or historical events that I can get recordings of, collecting all that information and then actually talking to experts in the form of, interviews. You can turn that into content as well about that interview, or you can profile an expert. There's a lot of different ways that you can turn that into something valuable. But the punchline here is great content answers the current question and then also the next 5 questions. So when you're doing this playbook, you're getting, hey, everyone here, what's the next article you'd like to see? It might be, in this case, hey, we want to see more about how to optimize specifically PDFs, or how to optimize, videos, or how to optimize YouTube videos. You could go down the road, and those are things people want to know. If they're watching this recording or they're in this live video right now in this webinar, they probably have those questions. And us knowing that shows people we know them, shows people that we care about them, because we actually know what their next 10 possible intents or their next 10 questions are going to be. And polls are a great way to pull that information out. So hopefully that helps, Michelle, in your question as well. So, tell me a little bit more about post-webinar. So we ran the webinar. We've got all this wonderful information. In our case, we're going to be doing an Ask Me Anything with you to generate more questions, right? And that's going to be turned into how this webinar recording manifests on our blog, not just a transcript, but we're also going to have the information that you could have only gotten if you were part of the community. We're going to summarize that, the goodness that comes out of that. But when you're thinking about this from a post-webinar promotion, what are some things that you get into or make sure are part of your always-on process?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much stuff. I love what you said, Jeff. I think that what I have here on this slide is just one example, but we try to extract as much as we can and come up with creative ways to keep kind of squeezing that event for all it's worth. Agreed on your point on creating blog posts. So that's something that I've been challenging the team to do and getting even on myself to do more of and think about more out of, off the tails of the live event that we put on. And because you're absolutely right. There's normally just like so much goodness in Q&A. On that alone, you can create blog posts. So, hey, we just did this great event. Go check it out, link to it in your blog post. But here are the top 5, themes of Q&A that we encountered. And I think, you can actually source those or note them. I think it can be a really interesting read. It can show your presenters too, that again, the mindset of the audience, it might be a surprise in some ways, maybe you uncovered some interesting things that, or hit on some pain points that you didn't expect. So here is an example of one where this is from our webinar best practice series. And this was all kinds of inception here, but this particular one of the series was about creating great webinar content. So all the great things that go into that. And Mark does a fantastic, thorough job of walking through similar to what we're talking about, but, pre-event planning, mapping during the webinar and post. But one of the things that came up is gamification. And how interesting. So, that in the question, it says, that's a real challenge for us. What recommendations do you have to incorporate gamification into a virtual event? Because, gamification very, very well is kind of like a type of content now. And and our answer in the moment on the webinar was, oof, wow, I don't know if we'll have time to cover that now, but we'd love the idea of gamification. We're going to keep digging into that. And often we are trying to utilize polls and Q&A sometimes to do a little bit of trivia or something. But man, that's a whole topic right there that we could blow out into a webinar and blog posts or infographics or who knows what, right? So needing to kind of dig into that, do some research, get out, get into MarketMuse and see what opportunity lies.
Right. I mean, that was a big thing we were talking about is we want to do on every webinar, and this is something that we're potentially going to do this year, is to have somewhat of a quiz at the tail end, that has some outcomes, because, that's where the real, is this valuable for you? Do you know this stuff already? We're going to learn about our clients. We're going to learn about our webinar guests based on their responses to those things, or based on how proficient they already are on these topics. And I saw 2 questions come in. One of them, hey, we say gamification. It's really wonderful use case. Said, wow, I was just testing this and I generated over 20 really good related questions you could ask each other for digital for digital events and using MarketMuse questions, which is kind of funny. So there's another use case there is getting into, if you have to do an interview last minute, that's a really good way to do that. Wink, wink. And great question or great comment, Adrian. I saw another one in there that was they were wondering how applicable this would be to them. It's not exactly how they wrote their question, and you know who you are if you wrote this. Well, I'm going to move on to the next poll, and I think that this is worth your price of admission, and I hope that it is more engaging than previous elements of this discussion have been, because this list is the rich media optimization framework or maturity model. It really walks through all the way from the basics to the expert. So I'd love it if you all want to put your answers here into this poll, if you can see it. What do you do with your podcast? What do you do with your events? What do you do with your YouTube video? Do you just put links with an abstract, one abstract? Is it one page, one item? Or are you doing overviews with show notes? Are you putting full raw transcripts? Also, are you editing these transcripts? Are you annotating them? Are you adding commentary? Are you doing research with a software platform or a semantic analysis technology to be able to say, hey, here's the parts of our discussion that we missed. Let's make sure we add color there to this transcript. Let's make sure we cover that with a new page. Or let's make sure that we have multiple landing pages, maybe one for every industry we target, maybe one for every part of the buyer journey, as Michelle walked through. Am I doing many-to-one landing pages? Am I doing many-to-one capture pages? Or am I doing even more repurposing tactics? So I want to basically know, for the people who are on this call, are we the experts who are doing 7, 10, 12 motions every time we have an event planned? Or are we just plopping an abstract up for our white paper or for our book that you can buy? So yeah, please, that's the walkthrough. So that's really how I think about it. What other steps, Michelle, do you think about if you were constructing a maturity model for event strategy or for event content or rich media?
Yeah, specifically around optimizing rich media. I mean, for the audience, like no shame here. So, because I think for me, too, like there's still a whole lot more that we could do to optimize every single event. So we do not necessarily, chunk it out into every possible form. We do so many events that we have to be judicious about which ones we go really deep into, and go the extra mile or do the full production. One thing though that I think I'd like to do more of is you have like podcasts here, but almost like the short video version of that, like taking little snippets of this webinar, right? And where there are really good call outs or insights, hopefully that we've shared, and you get like a really rich 30 seconds or 20 seconds or something, and slicing that out and posting that to organic channels. I think that, hopefully we can get some captions on there or something. I know there are a lot of tools out there to do that in a scrappy way. You don't need a big production team to do that. It's definitely something that your average scrappy marketer can do. I've been there. And that's something that I think I want to do more of. And it's like a miss or an opportunity for us, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the key on repurposing, and I tell this to everybody, this is your really super takeaway, is that everyone, if you're doing it right, you should always want to do more. And if you have that feeling like I didn't do enough with this expensive investment, I call it an expensive investment, but I mean in our time, in our prep, I didn't do enough to get the most, to squeeze the most juice out of that event. And that goes for, in the future when we're going to live events again, when we are putting on live events again, when we're doing digital events, when we're having anything that's going to be recorded for prosperity. And, how do you get the most out of it? And you should always feel we haven't done enough. That's the key. I mean, I think I want I would want more opportunities to both do things like interacting with the audience beforehand. I would love to be doing more of that. I would love to be afterwards, being able to do things that are gamified. But then again, like, you only have so much time. But yeah, you're setting the standard for this is our must do. This is our meets the minimum for every event. And then if we're able to layer things on, what triggers do we put in place that mean that this deserves that? And I think that that's what you were talking about. How do we decide? And by the way, 66%, just a summary, abstract, and content behind a registration. Well, we're glad you're here. We're here to help. We're here to help. One with just a full transcript, and then you've got the bottom of the chart with doing some more advanced methods. So, but yeah, I think that really that's a great breakdown. Hopefully, this gives you some more inspiration about getting content out before, getting content out after. We've done some really wild, large-scale things. I mean, before an event, which we felt a live event. I'm not going to name which one it is, but we found that there was a live event that wasn't doing a lot of coverage for themselves. We actually profiled the entire event before the show, and really did a good job covering it, and ended up becoming partners with that. So we've done some really unique things with these efforts. So really, just creativity is going to get you there too. So I have a kind of another question here is. Do you ever have your editorial calendar out and build your event strategy based on what you're already going to build, or is that ever part of your strategy?
Yeah. So, we're actually for 2021, we have been going through, I think anyway, a new exercise because I've been here almost a year, but I haven't been through kind of that very formal, big annual planning process until just now, and. So I think this is a fairly new process for the On24 marketing team, but it's very thorough and I think going to be really worthwhile. Clearly, we're in March, and so we've had a plan for Q1, but this editorial calendar that we're producing is actually based off of even like a higher level setting as far as our strategic positioning, our go-to-market, including, our platform messaging and, who we want to be, how we want to be going out into the market, and acknowledging our products and sort of like our overall messaging. We also just IPO'd last month, so we're now like a public company, and that's kind of been the forcing function behind a lot of this. So all of that to be said, I'm really excited that we have a really nice foundation to plan that editorial calendar from. And with that, I wouldn't say that events are like an afterthought at all. They're more like in parallel. They're getting thought of right within that planning process. And so, for instance, like we have a theme around hybrid and virtual events and what that is going to look like in later in the year as we progress through coming out of the pandemic and what a hybrid event strategy might look like and what the ROI could look like or how that might change. So that's sort of like a larger narrative, and we already have events in play that are going to be acknowledging that and talking about that topic. And so I would say it's very, like, we look at our event strategy, perhaps even more so than most companies, because that's like what we think about every single day, or digital events, in parallel with our content and, just our general editorial calendar.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I think that that's something that's going to really become big. I mean, you look at something like we've talked about, we have survey here, more than 2/3 of the, I'd say it's actually a higher number, 80 something percent of the folks that are here are all just putting summaries up with stuff behind the reg wall. That tells the story about a content item that MarketMuse, and I know that there are MarketMuse people listening, that we're going to write. We are going to write that article just based on that feedback. But also it's to say, what do you do when you are in a hybrid event? How do you take something when we're walking through, the convention center? there in let's all able to be engaging and interesting. And I guess that's really the challenge that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It just broke up real quick for me, but I think what your question was, like the interesting challenge of hybrid, right?
Hybrid, absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully I'm back. I'm back, right?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah. I thought you never know, like, who is it? Is it me? It's my poor laptop is dying. I don't know. No, it's all good. So that's something that we're thinking through. And honestly, like, we have a lot of research to do because that top, like, hybrid events are going to look a lot different now, like, moving forward. So we have a lot of research to do. Whether that's, again, like reading the news, plugging it into MarketMuse, asking questions, working with our analyst community to kind of understand the landscape, and then building out our content strategy from there. And again, like, planning out our events, hopefully in tandem with that.
That's awesome. Nice. So I have another question, and we're going to just jump into the Q&A. We've got about 10 minutes of Q&A. How do you think about internal linking or linking on your site when you are doing events, or more, I guess the question is related to what do you do with regard to linking, or what do you do with, that's run of site? How do you get people to the event, I guess, is one question. But then my follow-on question that I'll ask is, how do you think about linking all of this other repurposed content on your site?
So for net new events, we're trying to put those up and think about getting them on their own landing page. So that's table stakes. And from there, if we can have a blog piece written about it in promotion, of course, there's a great opportunity to link. We do have like a repository of upcoming events, so it'll always be posted there. We're trying to think about all the different places that are meaningful to kind of link back internally. I know, MarketMuse has been a huge help for that. For us, I work closely with our content team, and there's one particular colleague of mine that is in there, I think, pretty much obsessively, like in an awesome way, looking for all of those opportunities. and then post event, at that point, we have, I think a pretty good strategy going where, we have the opportunity to promote the event, perhaps if it's one of those that we want to keep evergreen. So we're able to like link externally back to it as well.
Right. No, that's a great point, is making that decision. Is I like to think about all of my related content that I already have that's related to this discussion, plus the new stuff I build just for this event, all should be woven together. I mean, it absolutely should, if this is going to live forever. If it's very, very temporal, if it's very, very, only relevant right now, maybe I don't weave it into everything, but I should have as many access points as is natural throughout. And that might be going back to an article I wrote in 2019 about, repurposing, for example, and adding a connection point and saying, in this discussion with Michelle, we talked about this specifically for digital events, and we get into even hybrid events. I mean, and going down that road. But yeah, I think that that's really an important thing if we're linking. It's very similar to a lot of publishers don't have a process in place at all for going back to existing content and linking to new content. It's a huge gap in the space. It actually is a tremendous search engine optimization negative, and that people don't get.
I was going to say, Jeff, like it astounds me, like depending on the company size, but for On24, it astounds me how in search results, if I search something very general, inevitably something will come up from several years ago. It's still ranking. It's still really like powerful in terms of like how the search engine views it. And that's something that we're finally like able to tackle, not manually, like not one-off. Right. So we're able to like finally break through and find those opportunities proactively, or at least less reactively than before with MarketMuse. So we're able to like go in and find untangle the web a little bit and weave it more meaningfully. So
I like to lovingly think about it as a tangled ball of wires is most sites. You're untangling the wires. The web sounds kind of gross.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, but it's been, I mean, it is incredible. Like we have a ton of content, and a lot of it is, it still ranks good. It's still, really valuable as far as search goes. So we don't want to dismantle it. But to your point, we want to meaningfully keep it relevant and like link it to something new.
Yeah, and it's a great way of kind of testing pages too, ones that have that stalwart value. And, do they need help? And we always look at, the main four different types of plans. There's some other ones for ABM and for migration and other for e-commerce specifically, but most plans fall into one of four types. It's quick wins. What's the stuff I could do today to put points on the board? It's, topics. Hey, I want to own this topic. How do I get there? But one of the segments of planning is risk, right? And there's two main types of risk. One of them is competitors, right? They're publishing on the same topic as me. What do I do? How do I make sure that I stay ahead? The other one is I have pages that are out there languishing because they're old. They get a whole bunch of traffic. They get too high of a percentage of traffic. How do I support that page? How do I support that page from 3 years ago that gets all this traffic and building content around it, support content, making sure it's improved and up to date and relevant for today's intent? I mean, imagine writing an article about events. I mean, you have to imagine this every day. Writing an article about live events, anything before COVID. I mean, it's completely out of date and not relevant for today's intent. I mean, you have to update your entire site. So.
Oh gosh, don't remind me. I'm gonna have to run away and do that. No, I'm just kidding. I know we've had to, we have to acknowledge that was a time that existed, but exactly, like keep as much of it linking back and updated as possible to acknowledging that we are in a different world.
Exactly. I love it. No, and I think that's a great takeaway. It's just like how much of your stuff. There's another great example. We write about natural language generation and processing a lot. That industry changes every 6 months. I mean, it multiplies. It's exponentially moving every 6 months. If you wrote a "What is natural language generation" article from 18 months ago, it's more outdated than you could possibly imagine. I mean, like, whoa, fresh, new, it's not even close. I got another great question. From Michelle. Is other than blog posts, what are some more examples of repurposing a webinar? Oh, we can do rapid fire. Love it. What do you got?
Ooh, infographics. How about that?
I love infographics. Is a great example. Segmented segments of the video posted on social or YouTube, teasers. When you yank out little video or YouTube short videos, someone's answering the question who's also in the audience. I love that. But yeah, YouTube short videos are a great way to do that. What else do you have?
Twitter, why not? Have someone tweet a whole bunch of snippet quotes and link back to the on-demand.
Yeah, a list of questions and answers, and survey outputs, and your take on those is very good. So.
Yep. I was gonna say, the same with the polling. So if you guys have like a poll in your event, you could probably spin out an entire piece of content on that. And honestly, the way that a blog post, okay, sure, but there could be many different forms of a blog post too. You could say, like we say, playbook, how-to guide, pocket guide, tip sheet, checklist. I mean, whatever you want to call it, you could produce a PDF download or a blog post, about it, or maybe both, right? For good SEO. And then some people love I'm in that camp. Some people love like the warm blanket of a PDF download still. So I get it.
Nothing wrong with printing stuff out. I mean, I've got printouts all over my walls, and it's okay. It makes you feel good. But the checklist is key. I mean, in this case, we're going to definitely put something out that describes, maturity model for Rich Media. That's a great example. But what's that for your event? What's that for your learning? Is the goal of and the question comes in from Michelle, which I know a lot of the videos that they make, I'm very familiar with their network, are a lot about learning and progressing education on technology topics. So it's, the quiz, the takeaway, the check your work. I love that. So
yeah. Love that. Like, actually, you could make it so that you have quizzes or tests in the webinar. So we can do that. I think there's lots of different ways to produce the content. I will say though, if your blog is doing well, always put it on the blog. I think that's a fair game. You might as well. And that's a great channel for most of us marketers to get pumping. So
if you stuck around for the tail end of this discussion, I'll give you the other two secrets too. One is do an interview with the guest. Ask for more. Do the AMA afterwards, ask for maybe another interview. Maybe you're asking another questions and answers, ask for, get a little bit more out of it with not as much investment in time or effort, but try to figure out what those additional layers of value could be. I mean, that can go an extremely long way. Profiles of, I think, for example, I think it's really interesting that you did quite a bit of work as a marketing manager at LinkedIn. I would love to know more about that. And I think anyone that's on this call would want to know that. I would love to know about, the progression of On24 from thinking about, maybe not thinking about hybrid events to thinking about hybrid events. And, those are interesting components that could easily turn into additional content items. So yeah, I think sometimes it's being creative. Repurposing is about creativity,
Definitely. And always be asking yourself, I will say, I think in many cases, you and I, Jeff, have this luxury benefit of marketing to marketers. So right. I'm often asking myself, what am I curious about? What do I need to know? What level should I be talking to? You know what I mean? And obviously not everyone is in that position, but trying to put yourself in the mindset of your buyer or your prospective buyer is huge. And so if you're not marketing to marketers, if you're able to lean into your customers, do some customer interviews and maybe get to that level of conversation where you can extract some really good content ideas. And it could be topic ideas, but it could also be format, so just to the point here, I think there's a stat from long ago, but 60 or 70% of buyers say they do love webinars to receive content and over other formats, but that could very well have changed. Maybe it is the white paper, depending on the demographic. Maybe it is the blog post. Maybe it's review sites. You want to make sure you kind of have presence in the right spaces.
Yep. No, I mean, I think it's great. I think that, you can go further than, don't create duplicate content. I think that's one thing I would just be thinking about, but you can go further than just the original repurposers were hey, rebrand your flops or optimize your winners, or, you can enhance your post and, do improve things, add video, publish it in, doing wild, crazy things, get into your favorite community and, cover something interesting so that you can link to it, whether it's a Reddit, whether it's a Stack Exchange, get in there and actually contribute something additional that actually weaves into the narrative. There's so many different things that you can do to, but make sure you're providing value. Nobody wants you to just cut and paste the same paragraph throughout the web. It's just not going to work.
Yeah. So. Or create your own community like you guys have done.
You see right through me, right? You see right through us, right? But no, speaking of that, we are on the tail end of our discussion, and Michelle is going to join us in an Ask Me Anything session right now. There's the bit.ly link, CSC AMA. And tell us a little bit about kind of what you're going to be doing for the rest of this month, the types of things that you're focused on, anything anyone would be interested in.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Can't wait to chat with you guys. So head over and we'll get it fired up.
I love it. All right. So join us in the AMA, or if you're unable to, go check it out. We always archive it. We'll also have a post about it, profiling the AMA with questions and answers and our take on it. We've got an offer for all of our webinar guests right now for our self-service offerings. And if you have any inquiries about our premium offerings, shoot me a note, jeff@marketmuse.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for sticking around for the AMA. Michelle, any last words?
Oh, no, this has been a pleasure, and looking forward to the chat. So thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure for us. This is so exciting. It's just a pleasure to work with On24, and I really, really love this platform. So
Great.
Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.